I believe that we are not creatures of random happenstance, that we're on the planet for a purpose to be able to actually walk in our created design, which is to lead people towards why they were put on the earth and to be able to walk spirit, soul, and body.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Game Changer Podcast. My name is Michelle Dutro. I'm your host, and I am joined today by Caleb Matthews. We have so much in common. We both came from a corporate background. We both jumped ship and decided that it's much better to help people find their true calling and passion and purpose in life, because without that, life is not very fulfilling. You can chase the success all day long, but no matter what you gain in your bank account or your boat or your house or whatever it is, you're going to be left saying, what's next? Like, this didn't do it for me. And this purpose-filled, soul-filled life is what we absolutely share in common. We also share in common the fact that he lives part-time in Cabo San Lucas, or San Jose del Cabo, Mexico, and so did I. So much that I cannot wait to chat about. Caleb, what do the folks need to know about you that I didn't cover before we dive in that's good as far as your background and what people should know?
You know what? That's great. The jump from the corporate world and right into the digital nomad life. And a lot happened in between, but I think you covered it. And Michelle, thank you for having me on the show. This is such a delight.
Oh, you're so welcome. Absolutely. Truly my pleasure. So let's dive in, especially for the folks listening. Look, we're going to cover an array of topics, but one I want to start with, if you are listening and you have the job that maybe it's okay. And, not everybody has to be in love with their job, but at the end of the day, you're here for something more, something different. Like, this is just a stepping stone, and you really want to figure out, what does it all mean? And what is my purpose in all of it? What happened with you, Caleb, that took you across that bridge? Because before you can help someone else, that light bulb had to go off with you at some point going, what am I doing here? So let's go back to that period. And what is it that enabled you to finally be able to pull the plug and start a new life?
Yeah. That's the corporate world was a significant chunk. Those 10 years felt like forever, but they also felt like they just whoosh and then they were gone. But I had to reach a point. I did reach the point where 10 years, when you reach that monument and that milestone, it's like, okay, this is a long time. It's time to kind of think about what next steps are of either development within that career or hopping somewhere else. And I was really good at my telecommunications sales job. I was the top of the game. I was the guy that was winning the trips and going to Seattle to watch the Jays and the Mariners games every time that there was a contest. I was the guy that won the Samsung contest that went to Vegas and got to sit 6 or 7 rows back from the center ice for the Stanley Cup during Vegas's great Stanley Cup run and be around a bunch of crazy fans and have a good time. I got to win the extra checks, got to win the trophies, got to do all those things. And on the outside, one may think, Caleb, wow, just why would you possibly move? I was good at my job, but it wasn't what I was designed to do. And I really felt a satisfaction that I feel like it's not moving, it's not active, it's not growing and creative enough. Like, I was raised in a homeschooling background. So if you can't have an environment where you can create and mold and shape and shift and reinvent yourself, there's some frustration. So for a few years leading up to the 10-year anniversary of my work, I had this idea percolating. I even ran it by business executives that were higher up than my boss, who had been directors of sales, directors of the company, and higher up in the company in telecom that I was part of. And I pitched the idea. I was like, this is the idea I want to do. I want to work 6 months in Mexico online and work 6 months in Canada in a row between the stores, because I felt like after almost coming up on 10 years, I'd earned that place to pitch the idea and to take a less pay cut. But my boss, he said these words to me. He said, Caleb, this is going to shock you. Those of you listening right now, Caleb, online sales don't work. Pause. And I was like, that's so archaic. And I realized, based on his answer with that, and also when he said, this wouldn't be fair to the others if I gave you this chance to do this. So we're not going to take a chance on this. We're not even going to consider your idea. I knew that I was just another number in the cog, and my individual design was not being celebrated. That's the moment I knew it was time to shift, Michelle.
So we do share lots in common. I too was corporate sales for 10 years, like almost exactly. So it's kind of ironic. I didn't know that was the exact benchmark for you as well. So I'm curious because you have mentioned several times about your design, what you're designed to do. I say all the time, there's plenty of things you can do, but that doesn't mean that those are the things you were meant to do. So you said the word design quite intentionally several times. What does that mean for you? And what is the new business? And what did you design around helping people design their life and figure out, who they truly are?
Well, in order to answer the question behind design, we got to jump back into what I call in the C-Link, the I of I principle. Now, what the heck is that, Caleb? That is, everyone has it, the early years of entrepreneurship, of innovation. As young children, we had our design being grown within us from a very young age. My nickname that my brothers would call me and my neighbors and my friends and my soccer teammates was TTM. Talk too much. So from a young age, I was a talker. In fact, I still have a photo in my scrapbook of me sitting on the neighbor's front lawn talking to their black lab called Ace, reading children's books. He was my captive audience. So before I ever spoke on podcasts or spoke to hundreds or thousands of people in Africa or different places, my neighbor's dog and my stuffed animal collection of 125 stuffed animals were my captive audience. So what I'm saying here is design is built in, grafted in by what you're passionate about, what you have joy to do. Because happiness is conditional, but joy is something that lasts throughout the timeline. So design for me was diving into my joy. As an adult, what I made that shift towards was living the digital nomad life of being able to have freedom to be my own boss, being able to wake up every morning and say, hey, I want to create content for my YouTube channel. I want to speak on podcasts like on Michelle's podcast and dive into Podmatch and connect with amazing people. I want to be able to exhort people to find their individual purpose between seeing the links in their lives and get to call my own shots. And I'm much more fulfilled being my own boss than making extra zeros on a paycheck, being miserable, doing a job I'm good at. That's why I made the shift.
So you could have done anything. I mean, the reality is, a few years ago, maybe not as vast as this moment in time where it doesn't matter what job you want to do. You can do it with an internet connection and a laptop, quite frankly, from almost anywhere in the world. But you very specifically dove into the arena of helping people figure out who they are.
Yeah.
Why, out of everything, and you could have had an e-commerce store and sold stuff on Amazon. You could have done anything. Why this, though? Why was it important to you, out of all the things to devote yourself to, helping people find who they are?
Because we've got a window of time. Time is running out for all men, all women. We are on a time clock. And to be able to speak to somebody across the airways, even what we're doing right now, even as listeners are listening from wherever state in the United States or whatever country that they're in, to be able to make a difference in people's lives. And many of the people listening to this, I'll never meet. You'll never meet. But making a difference to speak to someone's spirit, soul, and body, to be aware that there's more to this world than just making a paycheck, than just having stuff and having even friends. Those are all good things, but to actually speak to that spiritual element of that trichotomous construct. Because Michelle, I find that in our world, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts, especially in the West, we are focused on the dichotomy, the dichotomous construct, our physical body and our mind, will, and emotions. But the spirit, that inner engine of conscience and wisdom, gets left to the sidelines. And that's what I'm interested about. I've been fascinated from that since a young age, because that was been grafted in me to really speak to the spiritual element behind the scenes.
And so you developed a quiz, right?
Yeah.
There's something you can do online to help you pinpoint a little bit more, categorically. And in that, how does that help people? So describe what that is, because we're certainly, before we go, going to give people your website. But talk about that quiz, if you will, what that will tell people and why you think that matters.
Yeah, The quiz is called DNA Design Quiz, so it takes less than 5 minutes, absolutely free. And there are 7 different design types. So we've got activator, catalyst, navigator, steward, builder, healer, seer. And these are all different design types that describe one's individual framework that works beneath the surface. I'll give an example because I always like to pull from history so that people don't think I'm just talking out of my arse, saying, Caleb, you're just pulling the stuff out of thin air. No. What about Rosa Parks? She's a catalyst. Without Rosa Parks, you don't have Martin Luther King. You don't have the civil rights movement because Rosa Parks decided that she was not going to give up her seat on a bus. If we don't have Marco Polo, we don't have Christopher Columbus because both of those men were navigators that decided that they were going to search and discover that which was behind their joy. So if it works for them, if it works for Harriet Tubman, who is a navigator on the Underground Railroad, it can work for you and I because they're flesh and blood just like we are. So why is it important? Because knowing your design is like having your engine running in your vehicle. Not knowing your design is like sitting in a really nice vehicle, being at the wheel, knowing how it all works, but your engine's dead. That's the best analogy.
So if someone does that, they take the test, the quiz, a few minutes out of their life, and now they have their identifier, like seer.
Yeah.
Then they're like, okay, Caleb, great. Now what?
Now,
You know?
Yeah, for sure. Now pivoting from that point, you got one of 2 options. You can start to really engage more with those areas that maybe society or family or environmental factors, or maybe you yourself shut down. I'll give an example for this as well, because I know we're going to touch on this. Dreams. A lot of people just disregard them as just random data. And they say, oh, well, I'm not going to write that down. That's not important. Well, that's part of the seer development and the seer design gift, is to be an antenna or a dish in our spirit and our subconscious for dreams. So part of activating that seer portion would be start writing them down, start treasuring them, start looking behind the links to what's there speaking to your specific seer design type. If you're a builder, just don't disregard those ideas and those creativity ideas that you have. Just step aside, slow things down, write them down, and start engaging with those ideas versus just saying that's just silly, random daydreaming. Like, Michelle, you remember in school, especially in kindergarten or in junior high, when the teacher would be like, stop daydreaming, like pay attention. It's like, well, yeah, there's structure there, but we have to be able to be free to dream as well too. That's what I'm talking about. Don't shut down that sense that is trying to speak to you. Take a census of your senses.
And, I'm glad you bring this up. There's certainly anybody who has spent any time studying Albert Einstein or where his best ideas came from were his 20 minutes every day, every afternoon, when he was in his office, kind of leaned back in his chair. And it's that in-between state of being awake and sound asleep is that, what they call that dream state. And He would wake up and, as he would say, the most amazing idea just came to me out of nowhere. But he also said there's no such thing as nowhere. Yeah. It was quieting the mind and tapping into whether it's that higher self, whether it's that vibrational energy, whatever lens you want to look through. Yeah. But if we don't stop the input, stop all the chatter and just say, okay, what is out there? What is out there that I need to tune into that is meant for me, that is my higher calling, whether it's an idea for today or an idea for the rest of your life. This time, I love that you talk so much about the dream state and dreaming, because it is such, I think, an overlooked aspect of the ability to get insight into, like I said, whatever the aspect is of your life. That's where it's going to come from. I preach nonstop. You got to stop we're here on a podcast, and I would say, make sure after the podcast, turn that off and let's get to some silence and just see what shows up.
Yeah.
Right? See what shows up.
Exactly. Like, dirty electricity is a real thing. Now, people may think I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, but it really is a real thing. Like, if you are on your screen, or maybe you watch a movie really high sensory before you go to bed, and then you go straight to bed, you're probably not going to fall into REM sleep. You're probably not going to have that deep sleep. Maybe there's somebody who's the exception that likes to watch scary movies and go to sleep and have a deep sleep, but I haven't met anybody like that yet. But we have to take a census of our senses. We have to learn, as you're saying, Michelle, from history. Like, you took the words right out of my mouth, like Albert Einstein. Like, I have a few people mentioned here: Albert Einstein, Dmitri Mendeleev, Harriet Tubman, Paul McCartney. What do all those four people have in common I just mentioned? All of them drew ideas from their dreams. Like Albert Einstein, just looking at here, he dreamed of riding a sled down a steep hill, watching the stars change. And when he woke up, he gave the world the theory of relativity based on a dream. And Dmitri Mendeleev as well fell asleep, watched the entire periodic table in front of him. Harriet Tubman had dreams that when God would appear to her and say, don't go there, those people are going to turn you over back to your slave masters. Go there, follow the roadmap of the Underground Railroad. You see what I'm saying? Now, you may think, all right, Caleb, that's good for those men and women. Paul McCartney, dreamed of yesterday and had that tune in his head when he woke up, and we get to enjoy that song. But what about today? Like, not just history, not just even recent history, but what about me? Well, here's a really cool story. This one, do you watch Dragon's Den at all, Michelle?
I do not, but I certainly know of it. The equation for us is what, Shark Tank in the US?
Yeah. So Dragon's Den up here in Canada, they had a really fascinating couple on their show in the Canadian version of the show back in 2008. I was in a modeling agency, so you want to talk about putting many hats on. I was an international model for 4 years in a local modeling agency here in Canada, and got to do fashion shows and photo shoots and all that great stuff. Learned a lot there, but I modeled with a particular lady whose husband, I just want to read this out here as well too, just because the story is so freaking cool. He was the developer of a brand called Kickspike. Now, he was a golf attendant at the time before he came up with his patent. And he was, at that time, somebody that worked the pro shop, the golf shop, and selling, familiar with like golf shoes and golf apparel. But he had this really cool dream of the Kickspike patent, where he'd actually had a patent appear to him, a formula in his dream to be able to apply towards a special type of heel on the boot for this patent called Kickspike that he was able to bring as an idea to the Dragons. That was the first proposal that actually hit $1 million for the offer. And they got the offer, they got the patent, and the rest is history. But it's applied towards people who use it as well in firefighting, paramedics, people who are in the rock country, mountain climbing. But this patent for a spike that helps actually keep stability on the actual boot itself. But that all came from a dream. So all that to say, all that to emphasize, our dreams are speaking to us. Michelle, your dreams are, mine are, our audience are. There are codes to be unpackaged.
I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, I would be remiss to not ask this, and I'm certain that people listening are wondering, out of the 7, which one are you, and how does that play out in your life?
The 7, I would say the seer design type for sure, because starting at the age of 6, I had vivid dreams as a young child in the night season. And some of my first memories I can remember are vivid dreams where those are back in the days where, especially your homeschool, we didn't have cable television. We weren't movie watchers, any of those things. Very organic homeschooling, just a family that just had very, very limited access because my parents didn't want us to fill our senses with technology, at least at a young age. So I'm very thankful to mom and dad for that, because that learned how to be able to discover and explore and play. But dreams from a young age, starting at the age of 6, it began to really realize that this seer design type was a part of my life. It wasn't just I would have dreams once in a while. I would dream almost every single night. How it played out in my life? Well, I want to use an example fast forward to when I was in my 20s, when I was traveling in the Philippines and speaking there with a team. Now, keep in mind, I mentioned before the show, audience doesn't know this, but before the show, I mentioned that I found my passion to speak in East Africa, in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, speaking to groups of people. And one of our hosts and friends there, his name was Weston. He was kind of like one of our main contacts there. So just to use that as a reference point. But when I was in the Philippines, when I was in my 20s, I was at the end of a long day of speaking, of interacting with being at one of the villages, very, very simple setting, and went to one of the host homes because we would go off our different ways and they would host different numbers of us and we'd be able to choose our host home to sleep at. So I went to sleep. I was exhausted. I wasn't thinking of Weston in Africa. I wasn't thinking of him on the other side of the world at all. I was just really, really tired in Manila, exhausted after a long 8 to 9 hour day of speaking and traveling. So I fell asleep, and I'm in that in-between state between awake and sleeping, the lucid state. Michelle, I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. And I see my friend Weston standing at the foot of my bed, and I know, wait a minute, is this real life? No, I'm actually asleep. And he's standing there, and it's almost like his clothes are like just ripped, and like he's got this ghastly look of death in his face, almost like he'd just been through a war. And I knew that I knew in that time. I didn't know why, I didn't know how. I just knew in that moment that he was very close to death. Like death was very close to him. And I just had to rebuke death. So I spoke against that assignment against him and say, no, I refuse that. And I speak life over you. I partner with God's purpose and design for your life and rebuke that assignment. I woke up. So, wow, that's really strange. I saw him 4 or 5 months later in the summer of that year. And I said, Weston, this might sound strange to you, but were you really, really sick back in April of such and so a few months ago? I said, yes, I was, Caleb. He said, not very many people knew outside my family, but I had malaria and went to the hospital and was almost dead multiple times. So that you can't make that up. Like that's what I mean about your dreams speaking to you, interacting and doing something with them versus just being random something that you saw, right?
Absolutely. And I do think that everybody should write down their dreams, especially right away. Keep it by your bedside because 5 minutes goes by, you go to the bathroom and you come back and you're like, I had the most amazing dream. What was that? And you can't even remember what it was.
That's right.
And then over time, you'll start to see this very interesting pattern if you are paying attention to it. So, okay, what would you say? Because now we know your type, we know what you do. We've got a lot of history with your background and things that you've done. If you could imagine fast forwarding to the end of your life and looking back, why do you think you're here in this lifetime? And how do you think what you're doing now, all these different types of things? I mean, we have, the corporate life, we have a professional model, public international speaker, podcast, digital nomad, all these different things. Why do you think ultimately you're here in life, and how is all this going to piece together to make that come to fruition?
Ooh, I love that. Let's go right off the cliff. Hey, this is great. That's awesome. So these are the kind of conversations I really enjoy. Let's get right to the heavy stuff, because all of us, we all have to come to that stage, don't we? It's like, why are we here in this life?
Well, you speak to purpose in life. I'm assuming that you have an idea as to,
that's right.
This is my background as well. It's what I speak to constantly. And when anybody says I had a good day or bad day, if you don't know the ultimate thing that you're striving toward, right?
Oh, yes.
What is your chief aim in life?
For sure.
Then how do we benchmark if it was a good day or bad day, if the needle got moved closer or farther away, if we're not benchmarking it on anything, if we don't have a general purpose as to why we think we're here? I'm certain you know yours.
Oh,
so
yes.
I'm curious.
I'm joshing with you.
Yeah. What is that? Why is Caleb here in this lifetime?
To help people reach the purpose to which they've been created by God, because I believe that we are not creatures of random happenstance, that we're on the planet for a purpose to be able to actually walk in our created design, which is to lead people towards why they were put on the earth and to be able to walk spirit, soul, and body beyond this. Because podcasting, international speaking, having couple of my own companies, the Sea Link, the Itinerant Oasis, these are all just supporting characters in the main play of helping people discover what they're here for, what their design is, and to be able to walk spirit, soul, and body, not just in body and soul, but in true spirit and true peace with God, to know that what they're leaving behind is going to outlive them. In fact, everything we're benefiting from right now, the lights, the computer, these two things, just to use an example, we're benefiting from Thomas Edison, and we're benefiting from Alan Turing, who both have passed on a long time ago, but their legacy outlived them. And that's what I mean is my purpose is to help people discover why they're here and to leave a seed that's going to outlive them. Because we live in a world where it's like, okay, enjoy everything in our control or power, like, just now. We live in a very now-centered world, which, there's nothing evil and wrong with that. But if we just look at the now and not the bigger MPA, the multiple perspective advantage, the future, what's going to happen, what's the seed going to be for generations after I'm gone, then we're missing a bigger picture. So my purpose is to help people understand theirs and to have peace with God, because I believe that the big battle that we are in right now, Michelle, is between the tree of life, the spirit, and the tree of knowledge. We talk about spirit versus soul, and I know this is something you wanted to dive into a bit as well too, with spirit and soul. Spirit is wisdom, conscience, and revelation. Soul is our mind, will, and emotions. And I just think personally, and this is just my perspective, but what a really disappointing life it would be if everything that is in my life or happens to me or happens through me happens because of what I can control. There has to be that awe and that wonder, that spiritual element, that inner engine that's driving us. I call it God, I call it Creator, I call it Jesus. Everyone's got their own different definition of that, but there has to be something more.
Right. And so when you are working with people and someone finds you, however they cross your path, are you finding that lack of fulfillment, whether it's they're in a wrong job, in a wrong relationship, whatever it is that's, not in alignment with why they're truly supposed to be here in life? Are you talking to them on that soul and spirit level of let's get into where this misalignment is coming from? Let's talk to the person who's listening right now who feels any one or all of the different categories are not right in their life.
Yeah.
What would be some questions that you would ask someone to say, hey, in this moment, ask yourself these couple of questions to really take a look at what's going on underneath the decisions that you're making that are keeping you there, and what could be behind maybe some different decisions to move you in a direction more aligned with what your true soul's purpose is. So what are some reflective questions that somebody listening right now could say, all right, I'm tuned in. What should I be self-reflecting on right now?
There's a few different answers that I would give to that. The first we touched on a bit before would be to take a step back and say, okay, let's go back to early memories of what was the first joy that I found. For me, it was speaking. For somebody else, it could be music or instrument or movement. What was that first joy? Now, I have to be fair here, and not everybody had good, joyful memories in their upbringing. Maybe they had traumatic upbringing. They had that PTSD of just trauma, that never-ending cycle of trauma. I want to propose to you and to the audience especially that there is two sides to a coin, that whatever comes against you defines you. We know this in the great story in the Bible of David and Goliath. David didn't get to be king without having his opposition. And so whatever comes against us defines us. Interpret the opposite. If somebody had a life full of upbringing of emotional and psychological control, or abuse, or manipulation, or maybe went through many different constructs or cults or organizations that shut down their individual gift, I would say to that person, ask yourself that question. Why? Why this and not that? It's the same thing we ask in dream language. Why did I have all these things happen to me? What is the meaning behind that? The flip side, what's behind the veil, the Wizard of Oz veil, so to speak? That's number one. So look back into the early years of entrepreneurship, whether it's the good memories of joy or the bad memories, flip those bad memories and interpret what would the opposite be. What would the opposite be? And number two, today, ask yourself, is the environment that I'm in right now, is this something I'm good at? Or is this something that brings me joy, passion, and fulfillment? Those are two very separate things.
Exactly. Well, like I said, when we first started chatting, there's a big difference between what you can do and what you should be doing with your lifetime. So, all right, somebody is doing their self-reflecting and then they're thinking, okay, well, now I'm very intrigued and I would really like to go take that quiz. How can I find more out about Caleb? Where can people find you? What you have coming up and what is coming down the road for you? What are all the places that people can connect with you?
For sure. So first and foremost, the quiz on calebmatthews.net/ whatever the quiz URL is. I don't know if off the top of my head, but we got that there in the notes as well. And then calebmatthews.net. You've got my whole profile there, including many of the different podcasts that I've been on, YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, guys, ladies and gentlemen. If you're like, you know what? I love what he's saying. I just want to know more about SSB, spirit, soul, and body, understanding mysteries of the night season, dreams, mysteries, and history speaks, I have I principle. Go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@thesealink. Free content. I manage a team every single week where we talk in the comments in the chat about design. Whose design type from history are we speaking about today? How does this apply to my life? How can we learn from this? 3 to 4 videos a week. Those are free videos. What I have coming down the pipe this fall, 2026, I have a specific number. I've capped it to at least starting at 15. I'm going to be starting a online community because there's been this big demand for actually having these discussions outside of the YouTube environment, outside of the newsletter, outside of the one-on-ones, and actually doing more of a group webinar, group training. So I'll be having a community. The first 15 people that say I'm in and actually email me and say the words academy, you'll get a locked in monthly rate, and you'll also get a complimentary one-on-one session for actually uncovering your own design type. That's usually worth $250, which will be given to you complimentary. But for the first 15 people who get in, so that's kind of what's coming down the pipe this fall. And of course, my YouTube channel, my newsletter, you can find all of that on calebmatthews.net and in the links provided. But take that quiz. It will change your dynamic and your outlook on what you're doing in your design.
And I did check out your YouTube channel. It is phenomenal. You do put out a ton of great content. So definitely go check that out. I'm assuming, Caleb, then, is it easy enough for someone, they figure out their design type and they are looking back through history? You know how, like, what do they have, those books that say who was born on your birthday? So that you're looking at, like, who do I have things in common with? So could you look back and say, oh, I wonder, the builder or the whoever it is, that I can look back and see some of those other folks. And then maybe that's another lens that I can pull from and go, gosh, I do kind of have that attribute, or I do kind of have that, or I used to, and then I walked away from it. So I'm assuming that's also out there.
100%. Yeah. Built within each of the series that I've got there. Like, I've even got a complete series in the YouTube channel already on the 7 design types, where if you're like, you know what, I got healer, and I see that Caleb's done like a 15 or 20 minute episode specifically on healer with a few shorts. I'm going to rewatch that one on loop over and over again, because the characters he's talking about, the neuroscience he's talking about, has everything to do with my design type. So yes, it is there, and in the different elements of history that we speak about. So yes, and yes to all those things you said.
Beautiful. Well, I could not be a bigger proponent of the more time we take on self-reflection and really understanding who we are outside of the labels, outside of the job title, outside of, even being mom, dad, brother, sister. Who are you without a title or a label that nothing could remove from you, that no one can take away? Your true essence, the true nature of who you are. And the more clarity you have around that, boy, the easier life is to navigate. When opportunities come your way, the yes or no, everything is not a good opportunity. But when you know who you are and why you're here, you'll know exactly what's meant for you. And then the more of the matching opportunities come your way, because you're more and more living in that alignment, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, and every other thing. So, Caleb, what did we not cover that you believe is important for listeners to have as a takeaway that you want to make sure that you have a moment to be able to share?
Yes. I'm glad here we're segueing into that, because there is one burning example that I want to share. Something that we are all familiar with, something that we all went through as children. And that is the little tot, the little baby inside the sandbox. Now I'm going to use this as an analogy. When the child goes to the sandbox, are they going to find something, or are they going to discover and explore? The child is going to explore. And as they explore the sand and the toys inside that sandbox, as they're discovering, oh, here's the shovel. Oh, here's the pail. Oh, there's the stuffed doll and the animals over there. Oh, there's a little sparkly gold coin, a plastic gold coin that's there in the sandbox. They begin to find, but before finding, they are exploring. Why do I bring that up? I bring that up because we can learn a lot from the little baby us in the sandbox. So often we think that our purpose and our design is something to be, we got to find it. We got to find it. Oh, I got to find the lightning strike, that quick fix, that dopamine hit of, I got to find it. That's not the full picture. The full picture is we have to get into the sandbox of life, and we have to engage and explore and get creative and discover. One of the things that one of my late mentors, who's passed on several years ago, he often said, this is the closing punch I'm going to say. He said to us, he said, never lose the awe. When you've lost the awe, you've lost the joy, you've lost the discovery, you've lost everything. Don't lose the awe. Don't lose the discovery. And when we engage with that child, that discovery, as Jesus said, as we become like children, then we can enter the kingdom, that kingdom of discovery, the kingdom of heaven. So we don't feel like we have to find something. Strive in our soul. Discover with your spirit, your unique DNA of design.
Beautiful. Well, you are ending on a fantastic note, and there are a lot of greats that share that, back to Albert Einstein, that share that same wisdom as well, that what is the line, trade in your sense of cynicism with a sense of awe. But I know that that was always his biggest belief as well, is that your imagination is key. And that is something that, sadly, especially in the world of AI, there's a lot of great, and then there's that flip side of that, which is, now when AI can write everything for you, we're kind of turning over our creativity. And man alive, that is the one thing that I hope people don't lose sight of. And as much as we're turning over, maybe to write that boring email, but don't lose your sense of creativity to a machine trying to do that for you. That's the essence and the backbone of who you are.
100%.
So beautiful. People know how to get a hold of you. We have our wonderful parting words. I close the show with the same question for everyone. You, my dear, are no different. What is one thing that you absolutely believe to be true?
What I believe to be true is that every single person, myself included, male and female, have been created in God's image, and that in order to walk in our DNA of design, we do not need any institutional religious structure, any corporate structure, any secular structure, any mediation, whether that be a leader, an individual, a guru, or person standing between us and our God-given destiny. We do not need to abdicate to mediation to walk in the DNA of our design. Because we're a kingdom of priests, every single person on this planet has that special something, that DNA of design. And in that sense, we're all equal. We all are equal. There is no hierarchy. There's no hierarchy in the kingdom of heaven. That's what I know to be true.
Beautiful. And if you didn't think before that you are worthy, listen to this episode again, because every life matters. And that is a fantastic note to end on. So I appreciate your energy and your wisdom and the work that you're doing out there. I encourage everybody, it will all be in show notes. Check it out so that you can get one step closer to knowing a little more about yourself and why you're here, and paying attention to the signs and signals, as they are not accidental, that we pay attention a little more closely, and to our dreams, because it's all there by design to help us and guide us into our highest self. So thank you, Caleb, for being here. You were a fantastic guest. I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening and watching this episode of the Game Changer Podcast.